right, everybody, welcome to Change It Season 2, a behavior modification program where we will be looking at correcting misbehaviors and inappropriate behaviors in children. But first things first, we actually have to establish what a misbehavior is, because a lot of times I get messages from parents where they complain about certain behaviors in their children. They're complaining, the child doesn't listen. This is where you tell him not to go, that's exactly where he's going to. When you tell him not to do something, that's exactly what he's doing. Sometimes you hear parents complain that their teenage children are beginning to stand up to them, to question, to counter their instructions, and a whole lot of that. And when you look at it, sometimes when parents complain about little children not taking simple instructions, and then I ask, how old is this child? You start hearing ages like he's a year and 6 months, he's 2 years, and in all honesty, these things are normal for children in that age bracket. So to a very large extent, it is not really a misbehavior. You now begin to look at how best to reach the child, because it is not a misbehavior, it is a skill gap. Right, so a lot of times for some things we consider as misbehaviors in children, they are not necessarily misbehaviors. Children in that age bracket will act that way. Teenagers at some point will want to enforce their independence. They will want to let you know that they are no longer that little boy, that little girl that you hold their hands and take everywhere with you. They are beginning to have a mind of their own, and they want to, let you begin to give them some independence. So sometimes it looks as though they are rebelling and all of that. So these are the things we're going to be looking at in this program. First things first, what is a misbehavior? Now, a misbehavior is any action that goes against expected rules, values, or standards in a particular place or setting. That's generally. But for children, we narrow it down further. A misbehavior is any behavior in a child that is inappropriate, unsafe, disrespectful, or disruptive at home, in the school, or in the society at large. Now, that said, there are several reasons why a child will misbehave. A lot of things can make a child misbehave, and we'll be taking just a few so that this video is not too lengthy. Number one is when their chronological age doesn't match their mental age. Now, what do we mean by chronological age matching mental age? When you see a 7-year-old acting like a 4-year-old, it means the chronological age is lower than the mental age. Or you see that we consider to be a misbehavior, right, or an inappropriate behavior. Or children will misbehave when it doesn't match. Sometimes their chronological age can be higher. You see some 7-year-old acting, or some 10-year-old acting like they're 12 or 13. For such children, we say their mental age is actually higher than their chronological age. And what is chronological age? Chronological age is the number of years, months, days your child has spent on earth since it was alive. That's their age in numbers, basically. 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, 12. Now, mental age is a level of reasoning, thinking, understanding, and problem solving skills expected of children in that age bracket. That is the mental age. The level of reasoning, understanding, thinking, problem solving skills, social behavior of children in that age bracket. That is their mental age. So a 7-year-old, generally, there's an expectation in terms of reasoning, understanding for children in that age bracket. If a child's mental age doesn't match the chronological age, if the mental age is lower, that child is going to misbehave. And a whole lot of factors contribute to children's mental age not matching their chronological age. One is the level of stimulation and learning, or the quality of stimulation and learning that they are getting, right? Another one is the environment they are exposed to. Also, another reason why chronological age and mental age do not match is when you overstimulate children, right? You are giving them so much. When I say the quality of what they are learning, quality and quantity is not the same thing. The child learns so much, comes back home, there's so much lessons, the weekends, is filled with one lesson teacher, online lessons, the child really doesn't have time to learn. Now, you are overstimulating the child's mental space. So there's really not much learning going on in that child's brain. Unfortunately, a lot of parents believe that too much information doesn't equate knowledge. Let me put it that way. It doesn't equate maturity. So if you find out that there's so much misbehavior, this child has a lot of inappropriateness in terms of acting, social behavior, physical abilities, what you really need to do is to begin to work on the child's mental age by teaching, by giving the child the ability to experience things, by giving the child the ability to think, giving them the opportunity to solve problems in the home. That way, they will mature faster. Another thing you need to do if you really want to improve your child's mental age is to make sure that you do not put them in front of the screen. Excessive cartoons, excessive screen time doesn't help the brain of children to develop. I know a lot of people will want to argue with this, but here's the little I'm going to say. From age 0 to 2, there's a whole lot of connections going on in a child's brain. That is the age where a whole lot of millions of neural connections are going on. If you put a child in front of the TV, in front of cartoon excessively at this age, not much of that connection is taking place because there is no serve and return. The child is only absorbing, the child is not expressing. If you want your child's brain to improve at that stage, you should do more of playing with them, giving them toys where they can interact. There should be interaction. It is in that interaction, receiving response, these neural pathways begin to connect. For older children also, one thing the cartoon does is that it keeps them as babies perpetually. The child begins to copy and mimic the cartoon characters, and they are not developing at the level they ought to mentally. So to a very large extent, the screens are not your children's friends. It is not doing so much when it comes to mental development for your children. I know a lot of parents who say it teaches them how to speak good English, it teaches them it makes them stay calm. Beyond that, the disadvantages far outweighs the advantages. So a child will misbehave when the chronological age doesn't match the mental age. Number 2, a child will misbehave when there are no real consequences. A child does something wrong and you don't let them see what they have done and they don't face the consequences, they will misbehave more. Or if you are the type that you do not follow through on consequences. Okay, number 3, children misbehave when they genuinely lack the ability to behave better. They lack the skills, meaning they are not misbehaving because they want to be naughty or because they want to frustrate you or get on your nerves. They really do not know the right thing to do. So in this case, what the child needs isn't consequences, isn't discipline, isn't punishment. The child's behavior is a cry for help. What the child needs is teaching, correcting, and modeling, not discipline. Number 4, a child can misbehave when they are seeking attention. Yes, toddlers do that a lot, little children do that a lot. And then sometimes, right, for parents that are extremely busy, a child's misbehavior is a cry for attention. They want more of your presence. And probably you're the type that you have made one particular child the star child in the house. You have set that child as a standard for all the other children to meet up. When you do that amongst your children, you are most likely going to get one child that is going to rebel, right? One child that is going to deliberately decide to go against everything that first child stands for, so that he can stand out on his own and you can begin to pay attention to him too. So as parents, we have to be very careful when it comes to raising children. Make sure that we are not the ones that is encouraging sibling rivalry, and we try as much as possible to create time for our children. Yes, parents have to work, but we have to make sure that the little time that we spend, we make sure it is quality time that the children can appreciate. Number 5 reasons why children will misbehave, especially teenagers, is when they are seeking independence, right? It gets to a point where the child wants to let you know that I am no longer that little baby that you carry all over the place. I want to begin to take certain decisions for myself. So they will deliberately rebel against your instructions. They will deliberately do the opposite to frustrate you to the point where you just have to give in such situations. You have to tell yourself the truth. We want our children to grow. They are not going to be babies forever, right? They will get to the point where they are going to be taking or making decisions for themselves. So when they begin to approach certain teenage, you have to begin to give them guided and guarded exposure, begin to guide them to begin to take certain decisions for themselves. Or number six, rather, the environment you raise your child in can determine, in fact, has great influence on their behaviors. And when I talk about environment, I'm talking about the home environment and the school environment. Everywhere your child happens to go to, even if it's just once a week, if it's every day, everywhere is regarded as the child's environment. So you have to be very aware of the prevailing culture in the school that your child attends. You know, some children have very decent behaviors, and the moment you enroll them in certain schools, you begin to see some defiant behaviors in them. You know that the school environment is having negative influence on them. And the reverse is also true. Some children can come with very annoying, very terrible characters, and the teachers in the school are on top of their games, and before you know it, they begin to mold the child's character. So when you notice sudden changes in a child's behavior, and it so happens that you have changed probably the environment you live in, the child's school, or something has changed, or there's a new kid in the block, right? There are new people in the neighborhood that your child has begun to talk to, and behaviors are changing. These are things you really have to begin to look into. The environment can very well make a child misbehave. Bear that in mind. You're not the only one raising your child. The environment is also raising your child for you. Number seven, children can misbehave when they are testing boundaries. They want to know how serious you are with this instruction that you have given them. They want to know whether you have their time, you know. One thing I would like parents to know is that the way you're watching your children are also watching you. In fact, children watch us more these days than we watch them. They want to know when you will let your guards down. They look out for loopholes. A lot of times children do, right? They know when you are busy on your phone and you are giving them instructions. They know whether you mean it or not, right? So they are testing boundaries. They want to know how far they can get away with misbehaviors. Children love to misbehave a lot, right? They want to know how far, because naturally the human mind doesn't want to be restricted. They just want to, allow themselves to be free and all of that. So they want to know how far, how much of that is allowed with you. So they do that, and they test boundaries a lot. So these are all some of the reasons why children misbehave. Next, we will be looking at developmental milestones. Now, remember at the beginning of the video, I said not everything we consider as misbehaviors are actually misbehaviors. Some of these things are actually normal for children in that age bracket. That's why, as parents, you have to know the developmental milestones of your children at a certain age. Probably, if your children are 10, you should know at 10 what are the physical development they should have had, the social development, mental development, emotional development, psychological development. These are the things that you should know as a parent. And thank God for the internet. This information is readily available online. So just go online and you can go to Chat GPT or any of your social media browser and just type, ask it to give you the developmental milestones for children within your child's age bracket. That said, a developmental milestone is the skill or ability that children within a certain age bracket should have, but it isn't cast in stone, because now some parents can decide to go and check developmental milestone and see about 5 things that their children don't have, and then it throws them into panic and worry. No, it is just a guide to help you know if your child is progressing or growing or developing well. However, children develop at different stages. I'll say this again for emphasis. Children develop at different stages. The fact that the developmental milestone has written 5 things your 10-year-old should be able to achieve, and your child can do 2, doesn't mean your child has a problem. You check for the other 3 and you ask yourself, if I teach my child this, emphasis on teaching, if I take my time to teach my child this, will my child get it? Right? Some children have lapses in the developmental milestones because they haven't really been taught, or they haven't been given the opportunity to express these skills. So Sometimes when you check and you see that it is lacking, it is not because it is not there, it is because you have not given the child the opportunity to express. So don't fret, do not panic. Take your time to teach and compare and all of that. And then if you find out also that your child is far behind, there is also no cause for alarm. Give your child 1 or 2 more years and they will catch up. Okay, so next we dive into the behavior modification or correcting of inappropriate behaviors properly. Now, the first thing I would like us to establish is the fact that it is a practical exercise, meaning you have to give it your time. You're not going to say, okay, you've attended this class, you already have the knowledge, and that's where it ends. No, you are going to take your time to do everything that I'm going to be teaching here. Another thing is, I get a lot of questions. Parents ask, how long does it take before you begin to see changes? Now, in psychology, it is generally believed that it takes about 3 weeks for a child or for people to form new behaviors. But in practical terms, in reality, it doesn't always happen like that. For some parents, by the second week, in fact, for some parents, by the first week, they begin to see results. For some parents, they have to wait 2, 3 months, and that's because we are all human beings. Same goes for children. They respond differently to instructions, they respond differently to change. And it also depends on the intensity and consistency of the parent. But one thing I can promise you is the fact that if you're consistent, by the third week, according to psychology, you would have started noticing positive changes. Now, the first thing I would like you to do is to take a piece of paper. If you have 4 children or you want to correct or modify behavior in all 4 of them, you know that is extra work. Another thing I would like to say is that you cannot correct all the misbehaviors at once. We take it one at a time. So as a parent, what you do is you take a book or a paper. I prefer a book or a jotter so that you don't misplace it. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to list out all the inappropriate behaviors in your children. Give it numbers. What you want to stop saying. I'm going to talk about misbehaviors, the lying, disrespect, not wanting to cooperate, very lazy. And I guess laziness is not a misbehavior, right? Laziness is a lack of skill or the child is not properly motivated. But let's include it in this list. Laziness, disruptive behaviors, whatever the behavior is. Sometimes some parents will say, my child doesn't like to eat. That is not a misbehavior. We're not going to include it in this list, right? And for misbehaviors, you can drop some of the misbehaviors you want to change in your children. You can drop it in the comment section. I'll look at it. I'll pick or we'll discuss these behaviors, and probably I'll give you tips on direct ways. But for here, I'm just going to be sharing general tips basically. So first thing you're going to do is take a piece of paper, write all the inappropriate behaviors or misbehaviors in your children, write them down on one page. After you have written that, in front of each misbehavior, you're going to write the behaviors you want to replace with. Yes, because a lot of times when you stop a misbehavior and you do not introduce a replacement behavior, the child will pick another misbehavior. So you're just going to be going around in circles. So a child, if the child tells lies, you're going to write number one. This child A tells lies. He does something and he denies, or he pins it on another, on his siblings. What do you want to see in the child? You want the child to be free with you, to be able to own up when they are wrong, to apologize. Or this child doesn't want to cooperate. When you say, don't take this cup of water, or this snacks I have kept here is for tomorrow morning, nobody should touch. That child goes there and that's exactly where is going for that snacks, to go and take the snacks. That's the misbehavior. Right in front, you're going to write the behavior you want the child, you want to replace with. I want this child to just obey simple instructions without me having to raise my voice, without me having to say it 20 times. Okay, so that's exactly how you're going to write for all the misbehaviors. Then in the next page, you take another page and you are going to write all the good behaviors in your child. Now, these good behaviors you are writing is for you, because by the time you have written about 20 misbehaviors in your child, it can leave you depressed. It can leave you sad. You just sit down and you're like, God, who did I offend? Look at all the bad behaviors in this child. So you are going to write good behaviors that the child has. You're going to write it in another page. You need that for encouragement. You need that to be in the right space mentally to be able to run this program, so that you don't begin to look at the child as a completely hopeless case. No, a child cannot be 100% bad. Children misbehave a lot and it is normal. Okay, so let's establish that children misbehave a lot and it is normal. Okay, and then another misbehavior parent always complain. He's always running all over the place. He cannot sit down. That's not a misbehavior. That is not a misbehavior. You only need to probably redirect, especially for toddlers. Children have energy, and if you don't give them what to use that energy on, they're going to use it on you. They're going to frustrate you with that energy. So much later, we'll be looking at how to redirect all of those energies. That's not a misbehavior. But if that is something you also want to correct, you can write it down. We're going to be looking at that much later. You can write it down. So write the misbehavior. In front of each misbehavior, write the replacement behavior. Next, like I said, you cannot change all the behaviors at once. So the one that is most pressing to you, pick just one. Okay, we take it one at a time. One at a time, right? Pick just one. Okay, I want this child to stop lying. Pick just one. What do you want to replace that behavior with? I want this child to be free with me. I want this child to tell the truth. I want this child to always own up to their mistakes and misbehavior. So that's the first misbehavior you want to correct. So you keep the list aside and then we work with just that particular misbehavior. Now, the next thing you're going to do, like I said, it's a practical work. You're going to take your piece of paper. We're going now into diagnosis. You're going to diagnose the misbehavior. That's the next phase, diagnosis. So the first thing you want to ask is, when did this behavior start? Right? At what age? You will really need to, don't be in a hurry. Give yourself time. At what age did this behavior start? When? Was it when we moved into a new neighborhood? Was it when he started interacting with certain set of people? Was it when he got to a new school? Is it when he got into this class? Was it when I started working? Was it when I started coming back late? You have to do yourself this favor to pinpoint when it started. If you do not understand the problem, you cannot find a solution. Knowing the when will help you pinpoint why this child actually started lying. The next thing you want to do is, in diagnosing that behavior, is, what are the triggers? When does he lie? Is it when I'm raising my voice? When does he disrespect my orders? Is it when he's watching cartoons? Is it when he's hungry? Because hunger and stress can also make a child misbehave, right? And that is simply because for children, the part of their brain responsible for critical thinking and decision making, it doesn't work well when they are hungry, when they are angry, or when they are afraid. Hungry, angry, afraid. The portion of their brain responsible for thinking properly, it doesn't work well. So for some children, when they are hungry, they just go all over the place misbehaving. When they are angry, they are irrational. When they are stressed, they are irrational. So you ask yourself, when does this child display all of this misbehavior? Try as much as possible to pinpoint when, and then what are the triggers? Is it when he's watching cartoons? Is it when he just get back from school? Some children just come back from school and 10 minutes later you are telling them, okay, come and assist me in the kitchen, and the child is grumpy, the child doesn't want to. Or is it at night, the child is tired? Ask yourself when, right? When did it start? What are the triggers? The next thing you want to ask yourself is, number 3, is, how do I enable this behavior? Right? How do I enable this behavior? There are some parents that when a child that is already lying, right? The child is lying, and after the child lies, you give the child the beatings of his life. The child is lying because he's afraid of harsh punishment. and then you end up giving that same harsh punishment, the child will not learn to tell the truth. The child will learn how to